Good morning, everybody. I have not done this in years. We are going to make breakfast together. I used to make breakfast with you guys, lunch with you guys. I loved doing it, and today is my 11-year recovery anniversary, so I was like, how do I want to spend it with them? I want to make breakfast, my favorite meal of the day. My favorite part of my daily routine is my morning routine. This is my favorite part of the day, so we're going to do it together. And you sent across some questions about full recovery the last 11 years, so we're going to get into that this morning. But first we're going to make breakfast. So what are we having? We're having a dirty chai latte, which is prana chai with oat milk and honey, and obviously coffee. She's not an idiot. She wants to actually be useful this morning. And then I've got this sliced Kalamata olive sourdough, and we're going to do two different kinds. So one is just going to have butter and sliced tomato, and the other one is going to have avocado, butter, avocado, feta, and this magic. If you don't have this in your pantry, go and get it immediately. Vina cotto. It is a beautiful dressing and really good for those kind of like avocado smash creations. So first we want to get our oat milk, which you can thank Holly for my obsession with oat milk. I'm usually just a whole milk kind of gal, but I love how chai tastes with oat milk. It is lovely, especially with the honey, because it's already got like a sweetness to it. So we put that in my little tiny saucepan. The chai, they say to just use like a tablespoon, but I usually chuck a little bit more than a tablespoon. You want to make sure you get like all the really good spices in there. So we'll let that bubble away, and I'm just going to slice up some of my little cherry tomatoes. And of course, we can't forget about the most important person in this house, which is Lola. So she can stop yelling at me. She's an incredibly reliable alarm clock. Waking up with shame and guilt for being a terrible pet parent who doesn't wake up exactly when she wants me to. Oh, bunny, come on. Are you happy now, possum? Lolly, are we ever happy? No. Chai's done, so we just want to strain it into our mug. Coffee's already in there. Cheated and did that bit already. Honey. I'm like, it tastes not great. Honey, that's why. So we just free pour honey, however much feels right. Like any good cooking measurements, just make sure it feels good, and that should be perfect. Unreal, unreal. Got a pretty perfect little avocado. Just slather all over our toast. And then we do chunks of feta all over our avocado. And then I'm not kidding when I say run out and buy this immediately. This is Vina cotto. This is Maggie Beers. I think it's the best one. If you like things like caramelized balsamic or any of those kinds of dressings, this is that on steroids. Just want to drizzle that all over your feta and avocado. Beautiful. Don't waste a drop of it, it's not cheap. So here is our beautiful brekkie. I usually have out here, but it's been insanely windy and it is too freaking cold, but it is a beautiful day in Sydney. So instead, I'll have it in my office. So I'm gonna get some emails out of the way, and then I've got a call, and then I'll be back to answer some of your questions. Do you hear how crunchy? Sourdough. So I've got a bit of a break now until my next call, and my hair is annoying me, so it is scrunchy o'clock, which inevitably happens at some point in the day. And we're gonna answer a couple of your lovely questions. So, what has been pivotal to full recovery? I think for me, the key turning point and the thing that helped me to really get to the point of full recovery and then sustain that long term was
realizing that this was completely my responsibility. Not that I was completely alone in it, not that I can't have help and support, not that I have to know all the answers all the time, but that I had to make myself the most predictable, consistent force and source in my life. I had never had that, never from a caregiver, never from anyone in a role of responsibility in my life, nobody. And I had to make myself that, whereas I had been putting all of that into my eating disorder and hoping that if I ticked all of these external things I thought I should be in a certain body, behave a certain way, be obedient, be good, be perfect, then I could have some control over other people's behavior, over how the world operated. And that was just so false. It's like saying you're going to go on a round the world journey in a ship and thinking the best way to prepare for that journey is to try to learn how to control the weather versus trying to control how you build your ship to be able to withstand whatever weather event comes up. Storms are going to happen. Terrible, terrible weather patterns are going to show up. If you've spent all your time putting your focus and energy into controlling the weather, you have wasted your time and energy. Whereas if you try to have healthy control over how you talk to yourself, over your boundaries, over your self-care practices, over your mental health in general, and how you take care of yourself, aka the ship, then you will be safe when those inevitable terrible weather patterns show up, and you'll be able to enjoy the placid waters and beautiful sunrises when the weather is calm. Eating disorders try to control the weather. Recovery is the realization that that is futile, and the best thing you can do is learn how to control your treatment of yourself. And that's not strict, rigid control. That's being flexible, like I said, having healthy boundaries, having a healthy support system that you use in a healthy way, and showing yourself that you are your most reliable person in your life. So yeah, making myself the most consistent, reliable person I have was pivotal, not just to recovery, but like I said, I'd never had that in my life, ever, anywhere. And I have had to create that time and time again within myself. How did you find yourself again after recovering? I found myself by recovering. The discovery of who I really was a cornerstone of my recovery. I think that sometimes we think about recovery is this process by which we do the food stuff and the body stuff, and then we'll find ourselves afterwards, and the eating disorder will be removed, and then there'll just be this big blank empty gap where your eating disorder identity used to be. If you're doing recovery the way that I hope everyone gets to do recovery, part of it is the self-discovery. It's putting the eating disorder out of a job over time. It's not just ripping it away, it's crowding it out. It's finding interests and joy and connection and all of these things that make up the core of who you are, which then shows you, oh, I don't need this eating disorder to do that. And actually the joy I thought I felt in my eating disorder is nothing compared to this healthy self kind of joy I feel, or the way that I thought connection should feel in my eating disorder. It's nothing compared to the true connection that I have in my life with my friendships and with my relationships. The discovery of yourself is recovering, right? And the food and the body stuff, that's all kind of decoration. The really core stuff is the sense of self, is the treatment of self, is the identity piece. And it's not a full stop to it. I went into recovery when I was 25. I'm finding myself all the time. What I wanted and who I was at 25 is not who I am now at 36. My priorities now are about my purpose. My work is so much of my focus and energy and drive. It's about having a peaceful, joyful life that is simple. It's about having, these really core, beautiful friendships that I've collected over my life and really nurturing those and treasuring those. It's about adventure and creativity and about creation and, all this awesome stuff that I get to do with Holly and all this travel that's built into the amazing work I get to do, like going to Bali with our amazing retreat attendees and coming to Europe and the UK next year to get to do some cool stuff over there and potentially even Dubai. We're thinking of doing something there. That's what's important to me now. I wouldn't have given you that answer when I was 25 going through recovery. And I'm sure I'll give a different answer in 10 years when I'm 46 and again when I'm 56. what recovery taught me is that I don't have to reach this perfect static outcome of who I am as a person. And I'm so grateful for that, because that's what makes life exciting and worthwhile, is all the new discoveries, is not having to put yourself into a box. That terrifies me, not just from a recovery sense, but just I'm a true Sagittarian. Not that I'm super into horoscopes, but my God, is that one right? I want to live my life my way. I want to live my life out of boxes. I want to live my life for myself. I've spent a lot of my life taking care of other people, physically, emotionally, mentally. This phase of my life is about nurturing myself and doing truly all the things I love and enjoy. So it is a constant, exciting discovery. And to do that without the shadow of an eating disorder, and seeing all the ways that, you know, life can surprise you and you can surprise yourself, is so beautiful. Do you feel more fully recovered as years go by? You made a comment once that you feel distant from the experience but can still empathize. Absolutely. And I think this is such an important thing for people to know. I know it can seem impossible to even imagine what it's like to live without an eating disorder, let alone live to the point where you don't even feel that attached to the experience. I used to even get very emotional about these kind of anniversaries that I would have, and these, you know, videos that I would make. And I still do. Like, I feel emotional for that 25-year-old version of myself. I'm so grateful to her. I'm incredibly proud of her. It feels like a little sister now that I'm 36 in particular. Like, one day I'll be old enough to be her mum, and then I'll have, you know, that level of distance and that kind of pride. But I don't feel nearly as attached to that person or that experience. I do through my work. That's where that mostly comes through, is the benefit of that lived experience, and having someone look at me and know that when they're describing a behavior or a feeling that behavior brings up, that they know when they're looking at me, just from the look on my face, like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I know that hijacked feeling. I know that despairing feeling. I know that shame-riddled feeling. And they just don't have to go to these great lengths to explain it to me or feel like they have to make me understand, because I get it. But I don't get triggered anymore, even with things like, you know, I almost lost my life to my eating disorder because my mental health deteriorated and I made an attempt on my life. And up until a few years ago, I even felt quite triggered by that. I don't anymore. I can put my brain back into that period, and I do remember what it feels like, but I don't feel, I would say probably the word I'm looking for here is like triggered. I don't feel triggered by those memories or those experiences. So I can use it now in this beautiful way in the work I do, but it doesn't feel like it's a part of my current identity. It's a part of my history and who I am historically, but it doesn't feel like part of me now. Do you experience weight gain and loss now and then? Can you be normal about it, or does it trigger eating disorder thoughts? I am a human being with a human body, so I absolutely experience weight loss and weight gain across sort of that set point that I'm in. I also have stage 4 endometriosis, and this year I was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis. Lucky me. Another inflammatory illness. So my body changes a lot because of inflammation. It blows up my hands, it blows up my midsection in particular, and that can have absolutely nothing to do with the fat on my body or even the hormonal fluctuation that you experience around menstruation. My body will just do it because it feels like it, because that's just what it's in the mood for today. Or this morning, I can start off with one body that's one size in the morning and be 2 pant sizes bigger by the afternoon, and then wake up and be one size smaller, and then it'll just go back and forth, back and forth. So my body changes constantly. And then there is just like the natural fluctuation of my body, which is seasonal, where I'm eating foods which are probably a bit richer or heavier during winter, and then lighter and less dense during summer. But I'm telling you this in this way because I don't actually know. I don't weigh myself. I incidentally get weighed when I do things like get on a light plane to go to Lord Howe Island, because they need to make sure that they've got all the luggage and everything distributed the way that it needs to be. And I don't stay off scales like, oh, I can never get on a scale again. I can never see it. It is of no interest to me. It tells me nothing. It doesn't tell me anything about my health. It doesn't tell me anything about my well-being, about my happiness. And when I do see the number, I don't care. When I would first get on the scales to go to Lord Howe, when they had to weigh us with our luggage, when I was still in recovery, I remember the first time I saw my weight and I had a kind of reaction from my eating disorder self. But then the other part of me immediately went, so what? Look at your life now. Like, look at your friendships and look at your happiness and look at your well-being and look at how much better your mental health is, and you're not isolated anymore and you're not miserable anymore. You're not in pain anymore. You actually want to be here on the planet. Who cares? So it's really nice to enter that so what, who cares part of recovery. And then you just notice with time that you don't even have that initial reaction of, oh, do I care about that? Is that okay? Do I have a reaction to that? It doesn't tell me anything of value. So yeah, I would say I have a normal experience, but then again, like, people who don't have eating disorders are very fixated on their weight. That's the pervasive nature of diet culture, right? We recover from these things and then we see everyone else freaking out about sizes or weight gain or weight loss. So as I've always said, I think that we can have the opportunity to have sometimes the most ordered relationship with food and body of anyone we know. Like, friends of mine will often say to me, you have the best relationship with food of anyone I know, like the most intuitive. And I'm the only person they know of who has had an eating disorder. So I think there is an opportunity for us to be even further along the ordered spectrum than people who have never had an eating disorder or would never have one. I need to do the next stage of recovery without therapy or professional treatment. Did you go through this? I absolutely did. So I think some people have some misconceptions about kind of my journey or like treatment history. So I never went to inpatient or residential or anything like that. I couldn't afford to. I didn't even really know what those options were. I couldn't afford a dietitian. I certainly didn't have a coach. Coaches weren't a thing back then, that's for sure, but I couldn't have afforded it even if I had known it was an option. So I had a psychologist who I saw every week for about a year, and that was all I could afford. And then that was pretty much it. So yeah, I was filling in a lot of the gaps for myself. I think that's why I became so interested and then passionate about coaching, because I kind of became my own coach. A lot of the things that I then saw in the training, I was like, oh my gosh, I used to do that with myself. I used to set myself goals like that, or like use that mindset. Like, for instance, I quickly came up with the realization that when my eating disorder got anxious, that was the indicator that I had to absolutely go and target that anxiety. So I kind of flipped that signal. When I would get anxious, I'd be like, cool, thank you. You've just revealed to me that that's exactly where I need to go. That's where I need to put my focus. That's the work that I need to do. So when my eating disorder said things like, no, leave that bite of whatever on that plate, I go, well, because you've said that, I have to eat that now, because if you didn't say anything, then it wouldn't be an issue, but you said something, so now I have to do it. Or I've shared this before, like with movement, if I went for a walk or did some kind of movement and my eating disorder showed up, I would just drop. Like, I would just sit on the ground or in the gutter or lean on somebody's fence on the pathway until eating disorder went away. And if it didn't go away, I would literally walk as slowly as possible and go home. And then I wouldn't engage in movement for a period of time, because I wasn't going to continue to incentivize my eating disorder to show up. So then when I found out about coaching and the practical element of it, which is helping people with frameworks like that and to help them detach their eating disorder from their relationship with food or movement or body or whatever it might be, I think if you can get some really helpful resources to help carry you through, whether or not you might have support groups which are available to you, which are often free, or you might even be able to access some group coaching online. We don't offer that service anymore because I just don't have time, but I know that there are CCI coaches who do online group coaching, so that fee might be more affordable. Getting the 8 Keys to Recovery books by Carolyn, that can help you to maybe do some of that practical work on your own. Please don't think that you can't continue even if it's without professional support. There are people out there who've been able to do it with some professional support, like myself, or no professional support at all. There's certainly people out there who speak about their full recovery and the fact that that was part of the process for them. What made you decide to commit to recovery? What was the turning point? So I didn't have like a lightning bolt moment or I deserve a better life, or, you know, I have so much compassion for myself and this is terrible. I hated myself. Like, I detested myself. I thought I was the worst person walking the planet. I didn't have a lot of great evidence for that, but I also had depression and anxiety. And that was really feeding and fueling my eating disorder. My eating disorder was really a maladaptive coping mechanism for those things. So I didn't access like self-compassion or a like or love for myself for a very, very long time. But I am a very practical, logical person. So when I made an attempt on my life and then did not, get to the outcome of that, which is why I'm still here, obviously, I had to take stock of how did I get here. I remember sitting on my apartment floor, unemployed during the day, not talking to my friends, not talking to my family, just a mess. Just my life was a wreckage of what it had once been. And I lived in this apartment where I could see that it was kind of like a lower level apartment, and there was a pathway with a fence at the top of the windows, and I could see people walking past and they were laughing and joking with each other and just having a normal day. And I was like, I am in this hellhole of a life and I don't know how I got here. And I didn't start off here. Like, my life has been better than this. And where did this all start to go wrong? And then when I tracked it back, it was the development and the worsening nature of my eating disorder. And then I started to compare that to what I'd hoped might have happened. That if I was in the body it was always telling me to be in, if I was obedient the way that it told me to be, if I was, disciplined and I had willpower and I had, structure, and I had all of these external things that it told me were really important, then I would like myself and accept myself, and I would be confident and I'd be happy and I'd be lovable. And my life was the absolute opposite of that. And what it was like in my head was the absolute opposite of that. So what the hell had happened? Oh, I'd been scammed. I had been big time scammed, and I could see that. I could see the disparity between the promises and the hopes and the representation of all those things I'd been sold and what I'd actually ended up with. And they didn't look even remotely like each other. It was very much, this is what I ordered online and this is what I got, right? Like the Shein or the Amazon. I ordered this beautiful ball gown with the crystals all over it, and now I've got this one piece of tulle with one diamante stuck to it and some rope wrapped around it for a waistline. That's what it felt like. So my first steps in had nothing to do with self-love or compassion or believing I deserve something better or even wanting something better. I had no idea what that would look like. There were no representations of that as, accessible as they are now. I didn't even know about full recovery until a couple of years in. I didn't know about what Carolyn represented until a couple of years in. So, and my therapist, who I loved, also told me I'd be in remission forever, which did not turn out to be true, but that's how she'd been trained and how so many people have been trained, and she helped me in so many ways. But in that way, it really set me up for some pretty awful stuff when I, just ended up hitting these massive walls until I found out about full recovery. And then I was like, oh, that makes sense to me. That's probably more where I am than having to pretend like I'm still in the first week of recovery. That turning point, it was really just seeing how much the eating disorder could not deliver on any of its promises at all. So that's, again, why I love the coaching stuff, because when people are like, well, Mia, you probably can't help me because I don't like myself and I don't think I deserve recovery. And I'm like, join the club, girlfriend. Or boyfriend or whomever, because that's pretty much most people's experience. Is there's usually some disconnection from self or hatred of self or rejection of self. That's kind of the name of the game, which is why the practical stuff makes sense, which is why I always come from an evidence perspective. I want to listen to what your eating disorder is saying. It makes a lot of claims about you, about your body, about health, about food. And what we're going to do is we're now going to make it give us evidence to back up its claims. And spoiler alert, it can't. Not objective evidence that we would only accept in a court of law. So that's where I start with people, is the evidence and asking for that from your eating disorder, and then getting your healthy self to provide evidence that your eating disorder isn't reliable, it's not knowledgeable, it's terrified. And it tries to mask being terrified with sounding really knowledgeable and throwing out its demands and throwing out its accusations and its terrible assessments of you and language about you. And all that is masking is absolute fear. Fear of rejection, fear of not belonging, fear of not being safe, fear of not having control, fear, 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 fear. And then through that process, we usually can access some more self-love and compassion eventually. How can I keep myself accountable when I live on my own? I get this. I lived on my own too. I recovered out of home at 25. I was really driving my own recovery. And this is what I say to people. Whether or not you have other people who are helping you in recovery or not, this applies to everyone, not just people who live in their own or who are really driving their recovery on their own. The only person who you are really accountable to is you. Like when people say to me, well, Mia, my eating disorder made me do it because I could get away with it. Or I only did that because I knew I could get away with it. And I'm like, no, you can't. You can never get away with it, because the most important person who is aware that you're doing it, the most important person who is being impacted by you doing it and is going to bear the consequences of you doing it is watching you all the time. And that's you. Like if you use a behavior, that doesn't mean I'm using a behavior. If you don't do something that you know your healthy self needs to do to support you, doesn't mean that I am impacted by, you know what I mean? Like the day-to-day of that. You are. You're the one who in a year's time is going to look back and go, I'm still stuck in this cycle, and it's because every time I told myself I could just get away with it. You're not getting away with it in a year when you're going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm still here, right? So I think releasing that idea of getting away with it or not, you know, you're accountable to other people, so that's all external. All the accountability that matters is within, right? You are watching and you have to bear those consequences. So the part of you that goes, I don't care right now. I don't care about the consequences. I don't care what happens. Ask yourself, in a year, if I'm still where I am today, am I going to care? And if the answer is yes, then a part of you cares right now as well. And those two parts of you need to interact with each other. It's not my job to make decisions for people. I can help them to bridge that accountability. Like, sure, we might start off with them being accountable to me, but ultimately what I'm teaching them is to be accountable to themselves, because that's who is going to wear the outcomes, not me. Always putting the battle back between you and you. That's how in fact, if you really want to go back to what's pivotal to recovery, that's what we're talking about. The battle ultimately is between you and nobody else. Everyone else is just your support and safety net. The battle is always within. What was your first day of real recovery like? That's why I love that I have some of this stuff documented on this channel, because I would have forgotten all this. My memory is terrible. Like I was catching up with one of my best friends who I met in high school on Friday, and she's telling me these things from high school, and I'm like, who? What? When? What was that place? Did we go there? What? Like, she's like, you need to get tested. Like there's something wrong. I have such a bad timeline memory. If I even remember it happened at all, I won't remember what year it happened. So I'm so grateful for this channel, because I do have some pivotal moments. Like early in recovery, I went to the movies. I think it was with my housemate. I can't remember. And got one of those cups of lollies and walked out of the movies realizing I hadn't thought about the lollies. I hadn't eating disorder showed up to kick my butt about it the next day, but I didn't have that immediate anxiety and pushback and fear. I just enjoyed the movies and I just enjoyed the lollies and I just had the experience of going to the movies, being with my friend, enjoying the food, and that could just be the experience, and then battling it the next day. But it was evidence of oh my gosh, this feels really good. I want more of this. Yeah, I feel like I had so many firsts that I was able to capture here, which is pretty incredible. I am very grateful for it. And speaking of grateful, I mean, that's all the questions I could get to, but there were so many more. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being a part of this extraordinary journey that we've all had together. I feel like each year my gratitude changes and grows as far as what we built here together and what we've been able to do together. And it is never ever lost on me that I didn't do this alone, and that I now have the opportunity to hopefully continue to pay back all of the support that was given to me. And I hope in whatever measure you feel that from me or from Holly and I on the podcast, everything that I do here is because of that. I am very lucky that in my personal life, I've been able to move on from that eating disorder experience. But I will never lose that passion for paying back what I was so fortunate to receive, and not just from like a professional care kind of level, but from a community level as well, in terms of this place and this space and all of you. So thank you for 11 years. Thank you to 25-year-old Mia for turning on that iPad, even though she didn't mean for anyone to see it. Here we are, people saw it. The jig is up. You can stop blocking people on Instagram now, love. They've already seen it. It's over. But just an enormous thank you to all of you, not just for your support through my recovery, but through the ups and downs of life, for celebrating with me when things are wonderful, for commiserating with me and showing up for me when things are difficult, and for, just allowing me to live out my dreams and my passions. Every year I try to put it into words that reflect how much it means to me, and apparently I'm still working on it. But much love to you all. We'll see you next week with another podcast episode. And forever and ever, thank you so much for being here.